Now we move to our second session on day 2, track 1, which is Chai Pakoda Adda, a musical reading by two musicians, two authors as well. So just to begin with, I'll introduce X Schneeberger. X Schneeberger was born in Aargau, Switzerland in 1976. Over the years, X collected texts written in mornings after from underground raves, from life as a political activist and a drag queen. He began his studies at the Swiss Literary Institute in Biel, Bienne, and completed his MFA at the Bern University of Arts. X interweaves various spheres of art and works in a multitude of forms and identity. Today, X Noëme, that's his name as a drag queen, performs a reading of his award-winning novel Neon, Pink and Blue. So Yoshita, my colleague, will be sharing the screen, and it will be. I'm very excited to be a part of this reading.
Die Welt ging unter am Zürichsee bei 30 Grad im Schatten. Die Welt ging unter am Zürichsee bei 30 Grad im Schatten, und wir hatten uns nichts mehr zu sagen. Es gab keine Antwort, denn es gab keine Fragen. Die Sonne malte Kringel auf den Tisch, über Dächern steht Hitze, in der ich friere.
Meist schweige die Landschaft schön, doch sei gerade etwas passiert. X, eben unter dem vollkommen unnützen Schatten einer Kunststoffpalme hervorgetreten, habe ein wenig auf den erhitzten Steinen der Hafenmauer herumgetänzelt. Der Boden war zu heiß, um barfuß stehen zu bleiben. Mit Blick über das Gewässer auf die Berge, ein tropfendes Glace Cornet in der Hand, als wäre es ein schmelzendes Mikrofon. Und als gäbe es in dieser Hitze etwas zu singen. Als ob die Welt an diesem späten Sommernachmittag ein riesen Freiluftkabarett sei. Oh, you people and birds on the lake. Winter, and my life as an ugly, sleepy larva has now lasted a bit longer. A bit longer, and will last inordinately longer than that summer day when I unfold my glittering, iridescent wings. When I peel myself out of my greasy down jacket beneath the morning star, throw back the soon-to-be waxy hood for a day and a night, and rise from the swamps. De Eintagsfliege. I am a mayfly born into the day. And as long as my day for nothing but love, I may fly high. This is it's I'd say. Es gäbe genügend artige wie natürliche Gründe zur Flucht ins eigentlich fremde Landschaftsbild vor glasebetupfter Nase, wo man sich negieren könne, bis von einem nicht mehr viel bliebe. Ein Sepia-Tönchen, Sahara-Stäublein, im Bild gewaltiger Naturschönheit. Eines dieser Tage in seltener Weite ausgebreiteten Alpenkamms oder in sich verziehende Kreise 406 Meter über mir. Man befände sich künstlerisch in bester Gesellschaft einer Ringelreihe tanzenden Selbstmörderkapelle im Seetang, Zähne klappernd, eingereiht in der Kompanie eines Gebirges aus lauter Schwein. Zwischen Endmoränen purer Sprachlosigkeit abgelegen, gelegen, ab und an Hockspringen, über Scheiterbeigen geschwärzte Zeit. Der Föhn habe die Berge groß und zum Greifen nah an die Stadt im daro flacher werdenden Land gebracht. Sie seien derart unmittelbar ins Gesicht gerückt, die Berge da, als hätten sie einem etwas zu sagen. Inzwischen gab es davon Panoramakopfweh. Man habe den Strohhut mit den anderen Bündel, Stoffschuhen und Kapuzenpulli noch dort hinten unter der Trauerweide abgelegt. Man sei barfuß und barhauptes, in abgerissenen Hosen in einem löchrigen Unterhemd getänzelt in diese Hitze. In der Stadt am See könne man sich einiges einbilden, dass eine sich vergessen könnte, bis zum folgenden Kater in der Landschaft eben, in höhlenden Echos föhnig verblasen. Man tanzte in der Stadt, als ginge es ums Leben. Und genau darum sei es gegangen. Aufsätze, die Strümpfe, die Strapsen, die Art Deco Spitzenkleider aus der Rue Saint-Denis zu Paris. Man habe sich vorgestellt, sie seien einst von Josephine Baker getragen worden. In einem Anfall von trauriger Raserei. Alles aus jener Vergangenheit, rasender Traurigkeit verbrannt. Die Federboas und Pfauenfedern, die Strumpfbänder und Lackschuhe, alle Tanzaffigkeit beerdigt. Die Transvestiten alias in den Bühnentod vorgeschickt, gelöscht. Solch Zeugs wolle sie nicht mehr tragen, sei sie doch nicht der Eulenspiegel einer Industrie, die inzwischen selbst Mädchen und Jungs gegen ihre Gesichts- und Körperhaare ins Feld ziehen lässt, bevor sie überhaupt da seien. Die Mädchen, die Jungs, die Haare auch. 1, 2, 3. Den Körper zum Feld umgegraben, bevor das Gras grün geschossen. Die Zichore schon pulverisiert, bevor sie himmelblau geblüht. Schon das Gras sie leert, bevor eine Lilie je Schnee herausgegleist. Spielend rekrutiert, bevor sie in Bleistift absetzen und in Marschstiefeln korrekt eingewachsen wären. 1, 2, 3, 4. Körper seien die Schlachtfelder der Bilder und Worte. Am Morgen nach dem Tanz, wer ist noch da? Erst die Betten von Geliebten, bald die Sofas von Freunden, bald Bänke am und um den See, bald im See, wenn das Hochwasser weiter steigt. Es sei ein Tanz der Zeit enthoben. Ein Morgen danach sei nicht unbedingt an einem Morgen. Und da habe die Eintagsfliege über Randgranit ins ewige Alpenpanorama geweint. Ganz ohne Travestie und Kirche war die Trauer nun unmittelbar. Es sei der heißeste Sommer seit Menschengedenken. Solange der dauere, würde es noch gut gehen in diesem Camping Sauvage. Man möge nun einwenden, es gebe keine wilden Transvestiten, ohne Dach kein Putz. Doch ihr Dach sei der Himmel vor Zürich. heiße also mit 2 Pünktchen auf E und trete mit schwarz lackierten Fingernägeln voran aus dem Landschaftsbild. Part of a fucking beautiful postcard. I am the fucking poet.
So that was a musical reading by X Schneeberger and Saskia Winkelmann. And I welcome X to this Chai Pakoda Adda. And yeah, we're good to go. Hi, X.
Hi, Saraj. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Right. So, how are you doing today?
I'm a little bit, I almost feel a little bit nauseous because I realized that when I do a show, I don't see the same thing as the audience. And now I'm sitting on the same place like the audience, and that's very strange.
Yeah, it is usually. And I must say, X, it was quite an amazing reading. I couldn't have enjoyed any other reading, without the music, of course. But yeah, I think like the music and the aesthetics actually were quite wonderful and unusual for a reading. But just to begin with, X, what inspired you to do such a dynamic work with regard to the musical reading? What inspired you to choose the music as well as the aesthetics?
Well, it was a proposition for the long weekend of literatures, and this was the great chance to actually to go back to the roots of the whole project that ended to be a novel by the end, and to bring the music, the dance rhythms, the drag, the dance floor, the party, the haze, to bring all this in for once. What you might find in a book, but the book is basically black and white, linear, full logocentristic orientation thing.
Yeah. yeah, it was so refreshing to see the colors coming live. Yeah, and I mean, so I have experienced the queer cultures in India, and even though like they have been quite different than the queer cultures in the West, but increasingly they are merging together thanks to the super globalization that has happened in the few recent decades. But to begin with, I wish to just like, get away with all the boring questions. So, what are your thoughts about translated works? We saw your video, not um, some of us couldn't understand the lyrics, of course, because we are not acquainted with the language. But I'm sure that so there are certain things which gets lost in translations and certain things which stays preserved in translations. So what are your thoughts about the same?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful that there are translators around the world, because some of the most important impact on my life and writing is coming from James Baldwin, and I read two of his books in the original language, and in both cases I was very lucky that I could read it again in German. And this is talking about literatures with this S at the end means we need all the time translators in any form. First of all, also by the language. Then the other thing is I can say that I'm in discussions with an Italian translator and a French translator, and from seeing from outside, Italian and French must be almost the same, but we have totally different questions and discussions. There are some specific German and very specific Helvetic Swiss plays with the language. In some cases, we have to decide that we skip it, or that it's not just translated, but transformed instead of being lost. So translation is a big creative work of rewriting a book that already exists in another language, and also culture. The cultural codes may vary, and maybe just I just saw now that there's one line I would translate differently. There's a let the bodies be battlefields of word and images. And actually I would say bodies would be that in this Swiss German play of talking a language that is not yours, that you are making a distance from the talking and generalize everything to make it to make it general concerning everybody. And this Swiss trick of in talking failed I think in this line it failed, because it now looks like that the character would ask for the battlefields, but it's quite the contrary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's quite a different reading. It becomes quite a different reading, even if you change a single word. That's there are certain pros and cons of translations, of course. Yeah.
But in other way, it's not wrong. It's actually what I tried to say. It's this the core of the sentence is there. That in the moment when other people work on your work, you have to let go your work also. Like I don't know, a child that takes own steps with other people around now.
Yeah, that's so true. And how do you feel about talking with us in a language that that you haven't written the book in?
Most of us are always surrounded by English, and I realize more and more that I've lost a lot of the real English that I was taught in school, and then I have now also some pop streaming, whatever English. That I'm not sure if I shouldn't take another course to be able to follow discussions and to answer questions properly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, but yeah, I'm very keen to hear from you about the rest of the questions that I have on my list, because irrespective of the words which get lost in our conversations, we still are making, I think, a meaningful connection across cultures, and I think like that's something that I'm cherishing at this point of time. Yeah, you have played with the use of the articles a and neuter s throughout your book. How has the language played a vital role in your journey within the gender universe?
I think it's very vital and very existential how you got called. How you got perceived and how you got called is not necessarily the same. It's about the respect of how people want to be called. And I'm very happy that I'm living in a time where all this very courageous young people are showing that there's non-binary identity, and that this has an impact on language and also on behavior. And by following this, I learned that I'm probably more a hyper-binary type, in the sense of that I never could decide. I'm always more or less between the poles. I'm playing out more my masculinity. I'm playing out more my femininity. So for me, the language is also the playground of this. Instead of the battlefield, I'm looking for a playground.
Yeah. I mean, like, so my second language is English. I'm more comfortable with Hindi at home, and in the Devanagari script, which births Hindi, we have certain gender neutral articles, and gender neutral terms to denote someone else. However, that finds no position or place in English language, and I think like when I was learning German, I didn't like to well, but when I was just learning German, I saw how the German language also has certain places for gender neutrality. So when you travel from one language to other, in your work, outside your work, do you think that is somewhat a hindrance?
Sorry, I didn't get the last thing.
So is that a hindrance for you? Is that something that would bother you if you don't find gender neutral, pronouns, gender neutral terms available in a language that you recently visit?
Well, the funny thing is actually the pronouns you mentioned. These are the Swiss German pronouns, and as they should be. And I grew up that we didn't have different pronouns for men and women in my specific regional dialect. So actually, I had to learn first that there is this pronounced difference between the genders, and I think that shows it quite well that we are not only now. Language is always in exchange with other languages to grow, to vary, to get things maybe more precise, and other things that disappear and survive in another language. As the European model of gender tried to be imposed all over the world, and we see now that big parts of this discussions we lead are very regional. It's a German discussion of gender, it's a European discussion, an American discussion of gender, because we feel now that there's a big lack of possibilities in our cultures. But first of all, we're turning once more around ourselves before we realize, oh, there are other cultures with old traditions of other pronouns, other identities, other gender. We see how we integrate it, but we know that it works and that it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this question makes me think a lot. So,
yeah.
For me, I think what I really want to point out is that as an artist and as a writer and as a drag queen, I'm on the playful side. That doesn't say that it doesn't relate to trauma and to loneliness and all these things that queer people are facing. I think the homelessness is a very important motive in many variations. The moment that you find yourself, you lose everything. That's the part of many LGBTQ coming out experiences. And that we have now at least a discussion and already some inclusive writings and spellings. I think this changes a lot. That to be meant, at least sometimes in this world, is a new experience and a very existential one. Yeah, it's not only the playground as I can do as an artist in real life. It's a very basic question.
Yeah. And I was reading some of your works. I couldn't get the whole translated work. However, I did read as much as I could from your book. Beautifully present, and you have beautifully presented your thoughts. In that book, I could understand a lot of the language that you used because it resembled the queerness around me as well. Somehow I also thought that this is me. I put myself in the shoes of the protagonist, and especially when you jump from one part of the story to the other part of the story, and that jumps also is a very gendered jump. And I was curious as to how you have been able to have conversation with your own body throughout your work, and what are some of the conversations that you would like to share that you still do have with yourself, your body, and your mind, of course.
Yeah, it's. I'm very happy that you read some things in my book concerning this, because it's a conversation beyond words. And by thinking about it, as I have this hyper binary play that I want to be this and I also want to be that, and both is the same truth and true as the other one. I also can always flee back into my white male privileges, because I look white and I can look male if I would like to do, and sometimes I overdo. And it took me a while to realize that this is part of this big misogyny behind most of our cultural constructions, that I'm afraid to be called in female pronouns and so on. I really, because I had the possibility to play, I could sometimes also escape some questions I had to get there one day, and to realize that, yeah, my need to play with it is also related with the fear of what it could do to your life. And it's public, and language is public. Yeah. Language is a coming out.
Yeah.
Yes. And at the moment, that was the second part you asked me. At the moment, I had the luck that in the most of the productive times in the last months, I was very healthy. I could relay on my body and on my health. And so at the moment, it's not this. I have now some months in my life that I could really act out and go into places like we saw before at the video. And I know that there were other times in my life, and there will be other times coming. It's not, when identity is performance, then you also have these sad times when you are, how do you say that, underplayed, underperformed. You're just not ready to be always in performance. Your body and your health and your age and your mental health are very basic in this game. And at the moment, it works very well. That's what I can say.
And of course, I think like now that you've mentioned, how you've been feeling in the last couple of months, I must say that we have been having multiple conversations with queer persons in India about the impact the pandemic has had on the community. I was just wondering how it has been dealt with or experienced by queer persons, drag artists in Switzerland.
Well, I probably can only talk about myself, and that's very typical about this time, that when you have this tendency to talk also for others without asking them, at least in the pandemic times, I've learned to talk about myself. And for me, it was a real sad, a very scary beginning of the pandemic, because I knew that my social life is in the nightlife. My very deep and good friendships are in the nightlife, and I meet them more often than other good and deep friends from school, for example. But the friends from school, I have changed the numbers, and the people I always see every weekend, I even don't know what's their real name. I mean, I realized that it needs so little, and that what I think is a bubble makes, and there's even not much grease left of this bubble. And I'm not on how do you say that, on dating sites, because I need to see, to feel, to smell the person. It doesn't help me on screen. So I was scared to hell for this time. I was lucky that I had a lot of friends, and that occasionally I just had for once some lovers who stayed for a while. That was a big luck. Not very often, but just in the right time. Yeah. So I finally got through, and I was very busy with the book thing. And we thought this book comes out and then it will be forgotten. And whenever there will be something, it's because we post something on Facebook maybe. But it was an overwhelming reaction, and so I could also enjoy this quiet time where I could set my plans after the agenda of this public machine doesn't wait for you. It just rolls and you're there or you're square. That's it. So I was lucky by the end.
Mm-hmm. Actually, my next question was somewhat about the community spaces that we inhabit. So I think like our discussion about the pandemic actually might have facilitated this question. In reminiscing tones, you have led the readers into the scenery which you call queer. What has your experience been while sharing these queered physical spaces with other community members? Can sharing these experiences with others make it more joyous? And you can obviously, like, talk about your time before the pandemic, because I think like a lot of things have changed. A lot of things will change, obviously, in the coming months.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about the pre-pandemic times, actually. There's a yes and a no to this answer. It's many motives from the queer party scene of Zurich are sort of composed and combined as all the rest is not it's not one summer, it's not this party, it's many episodes composed to something that stands as one now. But this was a way to show this freedom and at the same time to protect these safe places. And I was surprised that actually I think most people I know from partying who even read the book, what was really surprising, were fine with that they could recognize places, but they were not. I tried not to sell it out. That's the point. They're safe places, and they're only safe when they're not public. And to publish a safe place 20 years later is destroying the safe place, also in the memory of the people. So this is always a very difficult thing. At the same time, how to talk about the truth that in this life they're also victims of drugs, of sexual disease, of violence, the violence against the community, but also the violence, the domestic violence in the community. This is a very difficult thing, how to be honest without losing the perception that we don't know how these tragedies would have went on without the safe places. We don't know how many more tragedies we would have seen. We don't know. I don't know if I would be here. And so that this is actually the aspect to be protected. And yes, I think the sharing with it made the world more joyous. Switzerland is in the few. No, in many aspects, it's a place to live now since 1991, since the women have the right to vote on every level, everywhere, as the men. And since then, we have a Switzerland that you can be raving. We have a Switzerland that you have gay rights. Yeah, I say now gay rights because I'm not really happy. I think Switzerland is still a very misogynic country, and the lesbian needs are not really respected already in the same way as the gay needs, for example. We are still on the way, and this learning from others and sharing the experiences from the safe spaces made the places outside of the safe spaces more safe and more joyous and more, yeah, we have so many parties which are not gay parties anymore. It's they're even not queer parties anymore because, yeah, everybody who loves to party is welcome, and that's a great experience. I never expected that when I was young, that we just go party together, and then the rest of the night is this dealing with every individual you meet. How far do we go in our interactions? That's a very nice thing, and I hope it's not cut off by the pandemic time.
Yeah, I do hope so as well. Yeah. And of course, this is one question, because, so that we don't lose the track of thoughts, um, could you also elaborate on the physical or physiological manifestations of performing identity? That can be any identity, of course, a queer identity, non-queer identity, white identity, or what kind of heaviness comes out of it while performing this identity, whether it be, of course, specifically about the marginalized identities.
Yeah, I think that's the point where I wanted to go when I said that for me as a drag queen, it's a playground. For other people, it's a very serious question of decision. And it's the same. I hope I get back on track. I think it's the same here, that I think you have to help me back.
No, I mean, it's completely fine, and it can start from zero context, of course. But we were just talking about earlier. We were just talking about how, while embodying an identity, and you mentioned like how public the language has been, and what it does to the performance, and how we are sometimes not quite
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Now I got it, sorry. I think, and it's the same thing with this performing your identity, is that on some places it's a playground, and some places we pretend it's a playground, but we should never forget that depending from where you're coming from, how you're looking, how this is read by others, you are forced into performances to adapt in order to survive, to pass, to get through, not to be killed in the street and not to be beaten in schools and so on. And that's, yeah, depending on where your parents come from, how you look like, that's easier or it's harder. We should not forget that this emancipative part of trauma, that you step out and you act out and you integrate it in a performative idea of identity. That many reasons behind, many stories behind are unbearably cruel and sad.
Yeah,
that's what I always. Yeah, I think this song, the song in the video is pointing that out. It's a disco song. It's acid house, whatever. It sounds so joyous, and the text is, she never goes out without makeup, and she's like you and me, but she's homeless. It's this thing to how do we bring this together? What we actually always live every day. How we do this. Yeah.
At this point, I would ask the audiences, if, in case if they have any questions, they can drop them in the Q&A box. My next question to you, X, is about uh, about how this book was received in Switzerland, and since it has been engaging with so many complex and diverse themes, did you face any difficulties getting it out there?
No, I was prepared that I have years to find an editor, and then I was lucky, and the editor found me, and then this editor prepared me that she prints a book, but she doesn't give her any warrant that there's one single sold book, and that there's one single critique in the news, wherever, and so I was prepared for the contrary of what happens. I think it was about the time, it was the time, and there were, how do you say, a quote, there were journalists writing about it, and one said it's like dancing over the Helvetic, the Swiss abysses, and another one said it's treason as a chanson. So I think it was very, very well received. And it was also, it's a big difference if you're called a liar or if you're in a public that knows more about these topics than 15 years ago. For example, the queer and gay topic is one of them. The other is the history of Swiss child slavery, that some years ago people called me a liar, and now you can go to the official webpage of the Swiss government and you see it's a fact. And that's such a different feeling as somebody with ancestors who were in the system and who were broken in the system too and traumatized, and as a writer, it's a complete different world for me, and as a queer, mostly men, it's a totally different world. For the literature, it's a totally different world, but at the same time, I sense I feel it much more than before, that we always have to be aware if we're now part of pinkwashing of whatever, and then it's done, and queer culture back. That was X or Chris or however he calls himself. We already forgot him. And that's it. No, I hope there will be the next ones. And they will be also well received. Because I see some friends who have qualities, and because they're female, I think the literature critique in Switzerland is still on a level that it's not real literature critique. It's critique of men by men, and it's a strange feeling to feel a sort of a success and a welcoming. At the same time, to know it wasn't always like this. I don't know how long it will last, and I have friends at the same time who experienced just the opposite. To be cancelled and to be ignored as artists and just to be discussed as female artists, as if she would be a drag queen, Sitting here means also representing a Switzerland that is still very misogynic. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone in the audiences have asked whether the notes that you have used for your work Were they all your own, or were they also shared by others that you have preserved? I guess that's what they meant. Is there any way they can read these notes?
The notes behind the book.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, these are boxes and piles of dusty papers. Some written by hand, some printed out and written on it by hand. No, actually, I think maybe one day I can go back, but for my mental health as an artist who has been working 15 years on a book, it's good that I have put it in boxes and it's a fundus. So yes, sometimes I take things from the notes and I can reuse it now in other circumstances because I kicked it out of the book, for example. No, I think that's maybe the point why I have so many quotes. There are many quotes from other writers, which are actually part of the storytelling, and I think that's how I pointed that out. It's coming from somewhere else, but I think it's somewhere else. I wanted to have a much wilder anarchistic project, and I had it again and again, and by the end I have a very conservative damn bourgeois format of the novel, because it just gave me the space for storytelling and telling story with the language while telling a story. This was just about the format, and I think I cannot step back anymore. It's done. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks for asking whoever actually put that question in the box. But X, if our audiences are interested to see your other performances, where should they go? And I mean, just like in case if you could just like describe in a few words, what have you been doing in terms of your other art endeavors?
Yeah, as everything was after years of working and not being part of most anything, it was pretty overwhelming. So I never got to make my artist's web page, and still not on Insta. LinkedIn is still sleeping. I will reactivate my LinkedIn account, and there is the page of my editor, and it's very nice that I can actually put everything on the editor's page. diebrotsuppe.ch. Yeah, it's German.
Yeah, because we are ending, do you think it would be a good idea to actually introduce our audiences to your music video production, The Flying Swiss, for Glam Against Machine?
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I think like it would be a fun way to end, and we'll give our audiences some time to, check you out, of course, and check that book out as well.
Cool. Hey, thanks a lot for this talk, Sarah. I realized that we could have talked 2 hours more. Yeah,
yes,
I always had to. I had so many aspects I wanted to give you an answer, and I always had to decide which one takes place now.
Yeah. Time constraints are always gonna be a hindrance to our conversations, but yes, of course, like looking forward to take our conversation forward in some way or the other.
Thank you.
So just sharing the video now.
Smoke blue, smoke blue. Got some people away. Got some people walking up. Some people walking more than away from me. Some people walking more than away from me. I don't know if something's wrong. I don't know. I somehow wrong, but I decided to hook up to you. I just hope you do too. I just hope you do too. Smoke, smoke, smoke.
Thank you so much, Saransh. Thank you so much, X. Saransh, would you like to close the session? And
Yeah, thank you so much, X, for coming in, taking time out and answering our questions. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and looking forward to following your work.